everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Hybrid Healing Hour. Today, we are going to be discussing the truth about supplements, what to take, what to skip, and why it matters, with one of our returning and favorite guests, registered dietitian Susan Greeley. Hi, Susan. Welcome back.
Good morning. Hi, Deanna. Hi, Dr. Moraes. Great to be here.
Yes.
Thank you for having me back.
Of course.
So we know that this is a subject that you really like talking about, and one that you have a lot of expertise in. So, Susan, let's start simple. Are most people actually deficient in vitamins, or is the supplement industry overblown?
Great question.
Oh.
Interesting. Let's just
Dive right
out
in.
of the gate. Exactly. Okay. So a true deficiency is probably rare among the population in general, unless we're testing. We are now testing more frequently vitamin D, for example, and we're seeing that people are truly deficient in vitamin D3, often B12, for example. But deficiencies, unless you're testing, we don't know, versus an inadequacy. And we know that the American diet of our entire adult population is inadequate in many micronutrients, so vitamins and minerals. I'd say about a third of the population on a daily basis does not meet their needs for micronutrients. So that said, they're inadequate. Okay, so inadequacy versus true deficiency.
I see what where you're going with this.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's say we haven't tested, we think our intakes are inadequate, which is the most common scenario and why people take supplements. And it's a really good reason to take supplements, because if you know yourself, let's take just an individual, I know I don't eat well. I think I'm not getting enough of my daily, micronutrients that, again, vitamins and minerals are micronutrients, and the dietary supplement category goes beyond vitamins and minerals. It has botanicals and some other products, but I digress. So back to that, the question at hand, is the supplement industry overblown? I think yes, as well. So both statements are true. There are deficiencies, there are a lot of inadequacies, and there's also this really overblown, truly $billion industry in dietary supplements. So
it's very confusing.
Of course, it's
it's very hard for them to find, because there's 100 different vitamin B12s. There's
probably more
How do you know
vitamin
which
Ds,
one to trust, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
And it's important for consumers to be somewhat educated rather than just walking into a local drugstore or a large wholesale company,
Whether it be online or
online or Amazon. We have to
that's
say
where I was
most
gonna
people
go
are
with that.
ordering supplements on Amazon.
And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's great for being quick if you need
Yeah,
something in
absolutely.
a snatch, but then you can get a good quality Amazon I'm going to dive right into this.
Okay.
The whole reason I tell people, we recommend the websites we recommend, like fullscript.com, or we have certain brands we carry because we know where they come
Correct.
from. We've done our research. We trust them. We know that they make their own, and the quality, they're third party tested. Also, they're in a temperature controlled environment. Amazon, I literally ordered, used to get probiotics on Amazon. I didn't know any better. And they came and the seal was fried, literally fried. It looked like it caught sunburned. It was in the sun.
Did you see even my horror? I'm shocked by this.
Right.
It's
And then
crazy.
I
This is
pulled
wild.
out the capsule, and prior orders, the capsules would move. Stuff inside it would move. And this was stuck. I was like, okay, this goes to show who knows how long this was on a UPS truck or returned, or,
sitting in
sitting in a warehouse.
That's exactly
hot.
the point.
I was just like, wow, okay, that was never again,
Okay.
So I know we digressed into this, but it's just, the
you
quality
said
really
a few
matters.
key things there: quality, purity, potency, what's in that product.
Yeah.
That it's true to what is there. You mentioned the word third-party testing. So as consumers, where do you start? If there are 100 B12s to choose from, some companies, some manufacturers now are doing a very good job at marketing and getting their brand out there.
Mhm.
And I think that that's important too. There are some, well-known ones now that, what do I want to say? Might be the best B12 out there, but I'm not going to name any specific
Right.
brands, and I'm
Right.
trying not to.
Right.
But the third-party testing is extremely important, and also just understanding that it is an unregulated industry. So dietary supplements are this third, it's not a food, it's not a drug, and it's up to the manufacturer to show, to have good manufacturing practices. And there's NSF certified. That's if you see NSF on the label, or USP, Consumer Lab. And there's also informed consumer products. So understanding what should be on the label is important. But let's say it's not, and the company, though, does have really good quality and standards and all that. Look for, that labeling, and then this third party testing is really what you need to look for. So
and it's not just about the quality of like you said, like, okay, does this B12 have the B12 that I'm looking for, right? Was it the potency, right?
And the quality.
But you also want to make sure like they test for heavy metals, like, that's why
clean,
right, clean and quality, because in purity, right?
Yeah.
And that's the part where, I love our fish oil because it's third party tested. It does not have toxins, mold, heavy metals, and it's checked for that. Like how many fish oils are probably rancid over the counter at Walgreens, I'm sorry, or CVS, right? Like you're just like popping they just grind that whole fish the way it comes.
Yeah.
I'm just like, ugh, it just
and fillers.
Yes.
And it's like, it's a really interesting, we've already started down a different topic, but that's like, I really encourage consumers to understand what they're looking for on the labels, and to do a little research yourself on the companies, instead of just blindly going onto Amazon, buying what pops up because it's popular in that.
Exactly.
And why, number one, why are you taking it?
That was actually going to be our next question.
Right. So let's talk about that, because we've mentioned this many times on this podcast. We preach it to our patients all the time. There's a big difference between what's considered a normal lab value and a optimal lab value. And really, most people go by the reference range in the labs, but we look at what's optimal. Where should you be, not what the reference range says. Is that your philosophy as well? What do you think of lab values?
If you're testing, if you actually have some lab results to go by, let's take vitamin D3. Most people are deficient, literally, and we see this because we're testing. It's about 95% of the population is thought to be deficient. Like that's.
And that's
crazy,
another one. Labs say you're normal when you're at like 35.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's like 35 to 60 or something is normal, but we like 60 to 100.
Yes. So that would be optimal.
Yeah.
If they're at 35, it's an inadequate range, but it's not necessarily deficient. So somebody who is truly deficient needs a different amount than somebody who's in the suboptimal level. And then, and so use that when you can, for sure.
And that's one of the biggest things I've seen with quality too, is with vitamin Ds. Like they're definitely not all created equal.
Right.
But given, I've had people say, oh my God, Deanna, my neighbor tells me I'm on way too much vitamin D. I said, is your neighbor checking your labs? No, they're not. And I'm sorry, but like they need to stay in their lane. Okay.
Yes.
And I get so frustrated because I have people, a broad range. I have people who their levels are I like my levels at 80. And I'm like, okay, I want you 60 to 100. So let's get you to 80, 85. And we did a vitamin D podcast that shows why we like those levels, right? So go back and listen to those if you haven't, people. So the other thing is everyone's absorption rate is different. I have people who are on 25,000 IUs like 4 or 5 days a week, and they're able to maintain that. But I have other people at 2,000 a day. Like everyone is different. And that is why we check. And that's why we are big fans of monitoring levels to be in that safe range, right? And because if you get over 100, we want to back down on that, because there's, there are like too much is not any better, right? And I'm sure we're going to touch on that.
Why do you think so many people take vitamins without really knowing what they need and what they're deficient in?
That's interesting. Interesting question. I just think culturally, when did that start? I believe post World War II is when supplements became more commonplace, and adults started recognizing maybe their diet is not cutting it as far as what we need.
Cod liver oil, wasn't that the first one that everybody was taking in the 40s and 50s?
And then just a general multivitamin. What is a multivitamin? There's also no standards for what goes in a multivitamin.
That is so true.
Right? So minerals, but they often have other components.
I've been in looking to more like the prenatals lately, right? Okay. And so it is amazing how there are so many different levels of like what's in a prenatal vitamin.
Yes.
And I'm just like, there's it just blows my mind. And I know it's the same way
Yeah.
for multis, you know, like
Yeah.
it's, and, you know, they have the silver, right? The Centrum silver for 65 and older. And then you've got the women's one a day versus the men's one a day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know that
Pregnant
biggest,
and
right.
lactating. We do need to differentiate, though. There are
Yeah.
very different population needs, where you are in the life cycle.
It is. And that's why I was actually just listening to a whole webinar about from one of the vitamin companies, and they actually go through all the stages of a female. And I thought that was really
nice.
interesting.
That
So they
is
do
interesting.
prenatal, which is before, and then like during trimesters 1, 2, and 3, and then they do postnatal, then they do like premenopausal, and then they have
Elderly.
postmenopausal vitamins, and then yes,
But
yeah,
not
it was
young.
I don't
growing
right. I mean, I'm not
girls.
sure. I don't remember that phase, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully the kids that are growing and like, you know, early 20s, I mean, teenage to 20s, I hope they're eating well and eating a lot.
That's
but
the biggest population that's lacking in
Wow.
certain iron, calcium in particular.
wow, that's really interesting because I feel
Mhm.
like when I was that age, I was getting everything I needed because I ate
You
nonstop.
didn't take
And
the Flintstones vitamins
No.
like I did?
I mean, when I was a kid,
I wanted to.
I hated
I
them.
begged
Oh,
my
I-
parents to take
I
them.
couldn't stand the taste of them. They tried to
they?
get me
Yeah,
on
they
them
were
and I
nasty.
couldn't.
I don't even know if they're still being made, are they?
I think so.
Probably. We should
mean,
look among, the
right.
thousands and
Yeah.
thousands of products. Did I answer the question though, or back to when did we start? Why do people take it? I just want to say, I think cultural, this is again, speculation,
Right.
maybe more than fact. We're in a country that we have so many supplements available to us, and somehow consumers get the message that we do need, at least from a nutrition and health standpoint, that we're probably not meeting our needs through diet alone. And that's been a big switch over the last 30 years. I've been a dietitian, and we used to say diet alone first or diet
Mhm.
first,
Yeah.
and you can meet your needs. And that's really not true.
Oh, okay.
And that's why I think people are understanding, even if they do a little self-assessment on how they eat, but also the quality of the food that we eat, if the soil is depleted.
Which is
so
true.
It is
I mean-
true. It really is true. And it takes a lot of effort to eat such a wide variety of foods that you're possibly meeting all of your micronutrient needs. So there's that. And just for health. So why do people typically take it? I think it's mostly healthy people, and mostly healthy, trying to maintain. If you come in at a diseased state and think, I'm going to start to like pump my body full of whether it's a multivitamin or let's say, and I'm thinking diabetes, cancer, cardiovascular disease, the biggies, brain health, brain function, we like to talk a lot about. It's very hard to come into an already diseased state and reverse it through supplements.
Mhm.
And we know that that just doesn't happen. So the whole point is prevention. And you both know I'm very big on prevention, whether it's through diet or alone or with diet and supplements. But we have to get these messages out there earlier. And that's why I'm like, bring it back to kids. The biggest supplement takers are women, even if it's just multivitamins, and then the children of those women. And they're also more educated. And I think that's a really important fact. So why aren't we out there educating more minority populations who really could benefit from this, and their children could benefit from, I'm a believer in a broad range, broad spectrum multivitamin for children, because they're probably a huge percentage of our population, I'm talking children, do not eat well. They don't, there's, a lot who don't get adequate food on,
You're
day to
right.
day, or their diets are void of micronutrients because they're eating poorly.
Mhm.
We don't have to go off on our
No, you're
tangent
right.
and rants about
Exactly.
like the quality of the diet. But
I'd
so
say out there, the
start-
majority of the
yes, and then it
people.
becomes imperative. These teenage girls who are then, we in the blink of an eye at childbearing age.
Mhm.
So start them in their, pre-adolescent and obviously at birth and
Yeah.
and in
Well,
the womb.
The other thing I mean that we don't even have to touch on, but I truly believe that nutrition has an impact on a female's menstrual cycle.
100%.
And I talk about that with my patients,
Healthy.
and we see it with like iron deficiency. They
was
have
gonna say
heavier
iron.
menstrual cycles with
Yeah.
iron deficiency.
Yes.
And I actually recently have had 2 patients who have had heavy cycles, and I gave them an iron infusion, and they're like, you know what? Everything you said was going to happen happened. My next menstrual cycle was lighter. She's like, and I actually felt better. I was like, see? So they're like, I want to get my next one. Like that's something that it was brought to their attention. They realize it. And so, yeah, it's just amazing. And imagine like all the other vitamin or supplement deficiencies out there, or you even mentioned botanicals, like that's big. But let's move forward a little bit. And I want you to tell me what your top, if you had to pick like your top 3 or 5 like foundational vitamins, like what would you say for overall health, and why would you pick those?
Let me see if I can stick
Putting you
to
on the
3.
spot. Okay.
Yeah. No,
3 or
I like
5.
being
We could
put
do-
on the spot.
Okay.
It's okay. It's part of this. It makes it fun. So are we talking just vitamins or vitamins and minerals, vitamins,
Whatever you
minerals, and
want.
other supplements?
If you were to add something, a supplement.
So this is probably going to trigger some people.
Go for it. I like that.
And this has changed even for myself over time and
Of
over the
course.
years.
And that's, I think
My
I'm
number one?
constantly changing too.
My daily non-negotiable is my probiotic.
Okay.
So we can come back to that, but daily probiotic for the general population though, and I'm talking adults, I think most people could really benefit from vitamin C. And that's not the most common supplement that is taken, but I call
No.
vitamin C the mother of all vitamins. And this I'm becoming more aware. Well, let's say now there's a big emphasis on perimenopause and menopause, and women are taking more like a ton of collagen, for example. Collagen became a very popular supplement. It's still, there's not really clear as strong evidence to support taking it for joints, health, like why are women taking it? But what I try to tell them, they are getting the message to increase protein in their diet, for example. What if you're just focused on a high protein diet, but you're not getting enough vitamin C to support collagen production, to support your immune function?
That's
It's a
quite
precursor.
interesting. And I'm sorry to
Iron
interrupt you.
absorption.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
I actually recently heard about the vitamin C supporting absorption of collagen. And I never heard that before from
It's
anywhere.
critical.
And I did
yeah.
not know that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find that very interesting.
Smokers, a lot of smokers. I don't know if this is true with vapors, but people have some unhealthy habits. They have deficient diets. Or let's say you're not unhealthy. You're like a really avid exerciser, or even, right, an athlete and a regular athlete. You have higher needs. So I say vitamin C. And I'm really happy that you asked me that question, because I don't think people focus on vitamin C enough.
What? I was watching. I thought you almost made it. All
Can I
right.
take a sip?
Yeah, take a sip.
Yep.
We'll come back in by saying, so that was just 2. I said probiotic and vitamin C so far.
Okay, we'll restart. Go ahead.
Still whining.
Oh.
And I hear the whimper. Okay. Is Peter there?
He'll cut it out. Okay, we're ready.
Restart now.
Okay, so that was vitamin C and probiotic. Let me think a little. I have to give you at least 3. I'm hesitating on saying any of the B vitamins for a reason, unless you test and know that you're deficient in certain B vitamins. And where are you in the life cycle? Are you female? Are you male? As we get older. So I'm going to shy away from B vitamins. I'm not going there. I love magnesium. So far, vitamin C, magnesium, obviously one of the major minerals in the body. And I think it's really important and deficient in many people's
Is there a
diets as
certain type of
well.
magnesium?
That's
Because
a
there's
great
many different
question.
ones.
Yeah.
You're
plenty
going
out
for
there.
sleep. There's glycinate. There's magnesium oxide. You can get one. I know you. I'll give a shout out to you and what you have, one of your supplements, because I know you guys have some of your own that you've white labeled. I like your TriMag. It has 3 different versions of magnesium. There's magnesium threonate if you're looking for more to support your brain function. But I think it's important to, when you don't know, I go with magnesium glycinate.
Yeah, I think that's the most
Yeah, I agree
bioavailable,
with that.
ready
Yeah.
one, right? Yep.
And honestly, I'm really
And
surprised.
don't take more than less, by the way. Take what's on it. You don't need to go above, say, 300 milligrams. And even that is, kind of the higher end if you're eating well. So it could be anywhere between like 150 to 300 milligrams of magnesium daily.
No, I was saying I'm surprised that you didn't go with our favorite vitamin first, which is what most people focus on these days, and that's vitamin D.
So I didn't get there yet. You
Okay.
gave me 3. The reason I didn't is that's obvious, and we'd already talked about that.
We did
You
talk about that,
dedicated a
yeah.
whole podcast to it.
Mhm.
Most people are deficient, take it. But then think beyond that. So yes, if you are only taking one thing, it's pretty safe to go with, and for, I'm going to say for all adults, a 2000 IUs of vitamin D3 daily. You can, for vitamin C, here we are coming off of a very long winter. You can't start taking mega doses of vitamin C when you already have a cold or flu, but take it all the time. That's one that I really think most people do. So my own children, they know, what do I give my kids and myself daily? Vitamin D3 and vitamin C. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And then of course I encourage a good diet. So we've got D3, vitamin C, my probiotic, magnesium. Let me give you a fifth. What would my fifth be? It could either be a general multivitamin with minerals, because I feel that if you're supplementing all of your water soluble vitamins, the B's, vitamin C is in there, and then we have our fat soluble vitamins. We need some minerals.
What
Throw
are
in some
examples of minerals?
Okay, so I was going to say calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus. Potassium is not typically in it, but most people are deficient. So the nutrients of concern in our country, it's really interesting because they're directly related to certain disease states, are potassium, iron, and vitamin A. And you all see this, right? So we
That's
can
very
talk about
interesting.
blood pressure
Mhm.
and cardiovascular disease. Potassium is a biggie. It's now listed on foods. I think there's no reason people can't get enough potassium in their diet, and I don't ever tell somebody to take potassium because it can impact
The general American diet, especially in kids, is so low in potassium. If they're
low.
not eating fruits and vegetables,
See, I find that very interesting because how many
is.
times in our practice have we seen high potassium levels and we have to figure out why, and we find out that they're eating like a can of soup that has 1,500 milligrams of potassium in it. Like, I mean, it's
Oh,
just,
interesting.
yeah, we've had like, I mean, it's not that
Tomato
often, but
soups?
it's crazy how people
Yeah.
don't realize the amount of potassium they can actually be absorbing in their diet.
Yeah.
You know, like, so we've had a few patients where like,
that's
you have to
interesting.
cut that out. Like, we had to really,
Older?
Yes,
Yes.
older.
Okay. So
Yeah.
older adults.
Yeah,
like,
so it
and
was
we're talking
definitely,
about-
they were probably, I think everyone I've had
Over
that was
70.
high potassium, we're probably over 65.
Yes.
So because I have a feeling soups are easier to eat and if
They
you're
are.
alone and you cook, you just heat that up.
Yeah.
And so I find that most of the higher potassium foods were actually the prepared, you know, like the
Yes. Convenient prepared.
convenient
yes.
prepared foods.
That's such an interesting topic in and of itself, how canned soups come into play. And then
Mhm.
you said over 65, and we'll say even over 70. People's needs, dietary needs change,
Mhm.
right? So when we talk, about the general adult population, we really mean 18 to 65.
Yeah.
And looking at the individual and unique needs. Then we say that, but again, if you're a woman, you could spend many of those years pregnant and lactating, i.e. nursing, or being very athletic. And so anyway, there's a lot of different
Right.
varying needs, but that with potassium. So bringing it back to potassium, I don't recommend taking the supplement, but it's lacking in many diets. So of course I'm going to say, people really pay more attention to your diet, everybody. And even though I said diet alone, that's a different message than what we used to say in traditional dietetics 30 years ago, diet alone, diet first. Do focus on that first. Absolutely. Americans don't get enough fruits and vegetables. What's a way to get more potassium in your diet? Fruits.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people have shunned fruits. But what are
Mhm.
your best sources of potassium? It is fruits and vegetables, potatoes, citrus, tomatoes. Those are my favorites. So yes, if you eat tomato sauce or eat any version of a tomato-based soup, you're getting significant potassium in your diet.
and again, the key word in supplement is you're supplementing your
Right.
diet, right?
Yeah.
It's not replacing.
It's not
Thank
replacing.
you.
called
So
Why didn't I
replacement.
say that
you
from
can't
the
con-
get-go?
Yeah,
It is
you can't
meant-
continue going to McDonald's
Yeah.
and then just take your multivitamin
Yeah.
and think everything's all well.
Right.
So-
They go
And
hand in hand. And
what-
I want more people to do it and do it properly. Do improve your diet and do consider supplements where and when needed. And when you don't know, but you think you need something because you maybe aren't feeling your best, or you're getting older, or you've been sick, or want to prevent getting sick, even just for immune function, I still go with the antioxidants, meaning A, C, and E, and don't take too much of them. More is not better.
Exactly.
Even with vitamin C, I'm in the Linus Pauling camp. If you take up to 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day, you could end up with, diarrhea or some GI issues. That's your indication to say, you know what? I've maxed
Maybe
out.
it's time to back
Yeah,
back down.
exactly.
What's your feeling on over supplementing? So
Not a fan.
I see people, doctors especially, who say vitamin B12 is water soluble. So if your level is sky high, it can't hurt you.
Oh, no,
But
it can hurt you. We
absolutely.
don't want that's why you need to check vitamin B12 levels. Okay, and it's why I didn't say go out and take B vitamins. Foods are supplemented with folic acid now for pregnant women. So there was to prevent neural tube defects. Let me backtrack, sorry. To prevent deficiencies and birth defects, we started to fortify the certain products in the foods. I'm sorry, I can't even speak. To fortify foods. Okay, and so it was the B vitamins. And I see women in particular taking 3 different versions of B vitamins. Now they'll take Nutrafol, not to
Mhm.
call out certain supplements. They've become trendy and they've become popular. They are taking maybe a multivitamin. A multivitamin by default does have vitamins. So they can have, and some of them have excessive levels of B vitamins. And at the same time, they're taking a B complex. Why are they taking a B complex and a multivitamin? I'm not sure because nobody has told them
Not
that
to.
they're overdoing it. And then they're eating, and maybe there's somebody who does eat really well
Mhm.
and they eat their salads every day that, is a good source of folate, for example, and they're upping their protein and they're getting more B12 in their diet. You can absolutely overdo it. The body needs balance. Uh, an elevated level of B12 is not,
What do you consider sky high?
over 1,000, like
Yeah.
anything over
But do they not
10.
just pee that out?
No, no, at some point. No, that's a misnomer as well, that the water soluble vitamins are just peed out. And so that brings me to the point that many physicians say to, and this is actually very concerning to me, when doctors who don't know, they don't give their patients or even, maybe family members the right information in that they'll say, you're just going to pee it out anyway. Why take it? So it's not valuable. It's not worth anything. I completely disagree. So vitamin C, yes, the water soluble vitamins tend to not become toxic in the body versus fat soluble. But that doesn't mean that they can't become excessive and too much and lead to high levels.
So in the neurological realm functional, I guess realm, they recommend taking 5,000 micrograms of B12 daily for brain health. We've heard that several times at many lectures.
For anybody without
Well,
testing? That's
so and
controversial.
that's why I find this interesting. And so we do check vitamin B12 levels, but also I've seen where the level was like over 1,500, but they took that supplement that morning. So at what point, I do
Good
recommend
check.
backing down if I see it too high. I'm like, you know what, you probably don't need to be. If it was 3,000, I'm like, you probably don't need to take it as often. You could go to every other day, or you could, let's kind of just watch that. You can save some money. You don't, whatever. But yeah, I've always been under the impression personally that it is water soluble. So if you do drink a lot of water, which I push that for my patients
Mhm.
too, and then you're seeing that will kind of be excreted throughout
Mhm.
that day. So do we know how long it's actually like staying accumulated in the body?
Can I add something
Yes.
to what you're saying? You're talking about the level of these vitamins that are in the blood, in the
Correct.
plasma.
Yes.
There's also ways to test intracellular levels
Right.
too.
So
That
right. So I mean, exactly. That was actually going to be my next question: is how do you recommend being, testing these? Because I know there's a few labs out there that do check the intracellular levels, but unfortunately, insurance doesn't cover that, and so a lot of
Nobody's
people
That
doing
can
don't
be
go that
expensive.
far.
I'll actually put that back on you. Is this something you're testing with patients regularly? Because I don't know that that's commonplace. That like
I don't believe it's commonplace in
I
traditional
rarely
practices.
have
Like,
those levels
yeah.
on
I
somebody.
sometimes recommend it when I have patients who we've tried to optimize
Mhm.
and we can't figure it out. And
Mhm.
I do like that sometimes they also check I'm going to say this wrong, the oleic acid levels, like so where it can
Mhm.
recommend if they need more olive oil even or something like that.
Well,
It
we
might
can talk about spectracell, which is
right.
white blood cells. And
Yeah.
so there are different versions of testing. I really love to have that and once you see many of those and can compare them,
Mhm.
it's an ongoing learning process, honestly, with the individuals and interpreting these labs. But it's so infrequent that you actually have like the full picture and
Mhm.
multiple to
Well, and
compare.
even that testing is not all vitamins. I'm
No,
actually
it's not.
disappointed that I feel like they could test more. You know what I mean? I wish they
Yeah.
could test more.
Yeah.
And there might be other labs out there I have not really reviewed because it's not very. It's
Right.
a lot of people are not interested in doing that due to the cost. You know.
Exactly. It's a lot of the costs and understanding how things are metabolized in the body, how it changes.
Hmm.
And I think this is an area that where we're going to be seeing and learning a lot more. And
Hmm.
I find it absolutely fascinating, having been in the field of nutrition for over 30 years at this point, seeing things evolve. And now we're in the world of longevity lab testing.
Hmm.
But I think we're also still missing the boat in functional nutrition testing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, not to, I didn't necessarily answer the question because I don't have enough
Yeah.
information to go on to give you really, you know, in depth
Sure.
answer.
Well, how do you?
Oh, but back to
Yeah.
that, the bottom line is when you don't know we do know how the body functions. There is absolutely no evidence to show that having levels of B12 above and beyond the optimal range is beneficial. In
Right.
fact, it can be harmful. And same with folic acid, all of the B vitamins, quite honestly.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I mean, we don't check those regularly.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I do on case by case basis,
Mhm.
right? And I always tell the patients, I cannot guarantee your insurance will cover this.
Right.
You know, like, so it's that I wish that was more of a regular thing. And I get asked that question. I'm like,
Yeah.
look, I have zero problem ordering that test. I will check it for you.
Yeah.
It'll give us a reference range. It shows where you are, but unfortunately, like the insurance does not recommend doing this on a regular basis.
And you know what? If they're functioning well, so back to why would you even do it? If somebody is truly healthy and functioning well,
Hmm.
there's not necessarily a need to
Right.
even do that.
Yeah, if they're thriving, right?
If
If
they're
they're like
thriving,
I call
if
it,
they
if maybe we could touch on what's considered thriving
thriving,
versus failure to thrive, right?
failure to
Um,
thrive is an actual diagnosis, but protein, energy, malnutrition, and things. Not thriving, we'll say more in a subjective way, or having indications of how do you know something's amiss, or maybe I like when an individual comes to me and notices, oh, I'm having changes in my skin or my hair, and they think about their nutrition
mhm.
first.
Yes.
Right? I think
Yep.
that's really important. Become your own clinical assessor.
Yes, of course. I mean, I was just thinking. Well,
Muscle. Yeah. So
yeah.
it could be, so how do you know? Or you're having severe gut issues, but typically we show things in our skin.
Hmm.
It's a big indication of your nutritional health
And hair, like you said, I
and
mean,
hair,
and the hair loss and whatnot. And
hair,
I was actually just
skin,
listening to
nails.
Grand Rounds this morning. They were talking about the GLPs, and
Hmm.
one of the biggest side effects is hair loss. And the
Yeah.
people asked, is it due to the malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, due to not eating as much, or is it due to the medication? And it was,
It's,
we believe it's a combination.
I think
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
combination.
So
Absolutely. We want to find one specific thing to blame, but
right,
it's not. It's a
right.
full, it's multifaceted, multi-targeted approach. So back to that, if somebody's functioning well, they look, this has happened multiple times. I think sometimes people come to you with complaints that are unfounded. I'm laughing, but
Yeah.
or they'll claim to have GI, some issues. And I look at them, I'm like, your hair is gorgeous. Like you have beautiful, shiny, full, healthy hair. Your skin is unblemished. You're out exercising every
Hmm.
single day. I'm like, I think you're healthy.
Yeah.
If you sleep well, if you're eating well, you're moving your bowels, it's the full picture. So to me, that's thriving. If you have no issues, why in a nutrition assessment is one of the first things I ask, do you have any GI, do you have any, is there, or nausea and vomiting are typically when somebody's sick, but any constipation or diarrhea, if they don't, and there are no other real complaints, I consider the person healthy and thriving. Their weight is normal. They're not underweight. They're not overweight. They have good muscle tone. These
Yeah.
are kind of the basics to look at before we do any further testing.
So
Makes sense, right?
yeah, of course. And so, like, when you have patients with absorption issues or gut health issues, like IBS, SIBO, or inflammatory bowel disease, so like
Mhm.
Crohn's or
Oh.
ulcerative colitis, right? Even GERD, acid reflux, right? We know
Mhm.
absorption issues. So, do you change your approach to vitamins, or do you change the regimen? Can you explain or elaborate on that?
I do. Okay, so remember I said my top is a probiotic. I see so many issues with, we know this, GI ailments, complaints. So that's why that's the first question. If you have bloating, you have gas, you've got, you know, irritable bowel of some kind, alternating constipation, diarrhea, you just don't feel well, you're exhausted. So I think this is more common than not. I created that scenario where people come in and they make up stuff, but they look healthy and thriving. That's actually less common than somebody who is hiding. Just, we all compensate for not feeling well,
Hmm.
right? They could have gluten issues and be really iron deficient and not absorbing B vitamins, D, and iron, but still functioning and still
Hmm.
exercising, just really doing the best they can to hide the fact that they're exhausted. And so when you come in and you're just so fatigued or exhausted, you have to test, right? It could be vitamins alone do the trick, but it could be iron. I said the D3, magnesium. It could, and I said magnesium with the D, the iron, and B vitamins. But so sometimes it's multitude of deficiencies. Where was I going with that? I don't know. Sorry.
Okay.
Do you have one vitamin or supplement that you think is the most overrated?
Well, because of that, I do think that B12. I've seen this frequently that people are coming in, they're taking excessive amounts of B12 specifically because they think it quote unquote gives them energy. So all of the B vitamins are involved in converting food into energy in the body. And yes, being deficient in B12 leads to a type of anemia, it could lead to exhaustion, but I think it's really overdone at this point. And that's why I want to bring things like vitamin C back into um, on it's give it more attention and that. So I'm going to say B12.
What about biotin? I'd say that's mine. I think
Okay,
biotin is overrated.
it could,
Like, I
yes,
think it's
yeah,
great. Like, it can help,
yeah,
but it works on
yeah,
brittle breaking hair, not the root of the hair. So when
right,
there's a difference between hair loss and breaking hair,
yes,
and people don't realize that, and they're popping tons of biotin,
to stop hair loss,
yeah, to
and it's
stop
not
hair
doing
loss. I'm
that.
like, just stop. Like,
Just
and it's
stop.
great
Okay,
for like hair,
yeah,
skin,
I like.
nails. They say, like, but I'm
Right.
like, you might need more than just biotin. Like,
See, that's like what I said. You can't come in a
right?
disease state or like where there's something critical or overt. It's more than one, always more than just one vitamin,
Yeah.
right? And you look at this, you look at your hormone levels. We have
Hmm.
to look at gut health and functioning and
And we
um,
also look at genetics, right? So like one of the
absolutely.
things that, you mentioned and touched on the neural tube formation with folic acid and how that
Yeah.
was fortified in our foods. And what we see is like if you have like MTHFR or some other
Mhm.
variants or SNPs of, then you actually aren't even processing folic acid, the synthetic form. So you should probably really try to focus on eating folate sufficient foods, like
Mhm.
greens, leafy
Leafy
greens, right?
greens.
And you should also maybe take like the L-methylfolate, which is the methylated form, to help your
Exactly.
body process and
Absolutely.
metabolize that, right?
So
Can I say that quickly? Just my, i- you know, dietitian interjection on folate. Where do people get folate? I always tell them, think foliage. It's only
Hmm.
plant foods.
Yeah, that's
So,
actually really good. Yes, I didn't even think
okay.
about that. I like
Yeah.
that.
That you'll remember that now to
Yes.
tell people. How do you get folate?
along those lines with the methylated vitamins, there's other tests that we do also other than vitamin levels. We
Mhm.
measure homocysteine.
Right.
Homocysteine is a great
Right.
clue that someone could be deficient in
Folate.
methylfolate
Yes,
or methyl B12.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, and even
Yes.
inflammatory markers, right? Like a lot of times, like, I mean, I
Mhm.
often recommend like turmeric for
Mhm.
inflammation. There's many things.
We
Go
got
ahead.
I
You have
got so
something.
excited. So we're talking supplements and we haven't even gotten to that other category,
Right.
right? I mentioned so we talk so much about vitamins and minerals. And then if you're going to ask me my top ones, I want to bring up, so I've had a change of thought as well with things like ashwagandha. I bring that up specifically because there are certain supplements that are extremely well tested. We haven't mentioned creatine and we haven't mentioned ashwagandha that
Right.
fall into the other category, right? They're not vitamins or minerals, and many people are taking them every day. Founded, unfounded, definitely. Like, why are you taking ashwagandha? Now people even know what that is when you say it. 5 years ago, nobody even knew that what that is. It's a
Yeah.
botanical. It is an adaptogenic herb. I personally see that, and maybe from self experience, you know, we have life induced stress, and you can't talk about, um, sorry about that. We got some interruptions going on here. You can't talk about stress in the body or dealing with stress or, adrenal fatigue and taking things, supplements. People love to throw those terms out there. What is adrenal fatigue?
Mhm.
It's a little complicated, but if, what is one of the supplements that is known to help with, call it just life induced stress? It's ashwagandha.
Mhm.
If you are on thyroid medications, that's contraindicated. Do not take it. Many people don't know that. So
I did not know that.
a lot with the botanicals.
Does it just mean timing wise?
No.
That's
And
very
you
interesting.
don't want to mess with your thyroid, right? So if you are, that's my caveat, throw that in there. Anybody on thyroid medication, please consult with your doctor before you take any herbals. Okay. That's extremely important, and supplements in general. I think
Well, we're
as
talking
well.
about thyroid. Biotin also
Yeah.
doesn't affect the thyroid, but it affects the thyroid testing.
Right, the lab
So you need
levels.
to let
There's
your
a
doctor
lot.
know that you're taking
taking it.
biotin.
Yeah.
Yep.
And back to prevention, if you're a perimenopausal woman who feels very stressed out by life and you're not on any other medication, it's
It's
not
totally
a bad
fine.
thing
Yeah.
to try.
Exactly.
There's no downside.
Now, at one point, I'm gonna, and we're gonna come back to the other one, creatine. You mentioned, but
Okay, that we love.
you mentioned we discussed together that you like rhodiola instead of
do.
ashwagandha, or as well as
As well as,
Uh-huh.
or slightly different if you're dealing with some hormonal imbalances, maybe perimenopause, ashwagandha is good. If you're more really dealing with high stress levels, let's say in your 20s, I don't think somebody, a healthy person in their 20s, necessarily needs ashwagandha. I think it's actually really helpful more in your, this, and I'm speaking actually to more women than men, in your 40s, 50s, 60s, that
Okay.
type. Okay. Rhodiola, man, I'm feeling stressed out, burned out. I work a lot. I exercise. I tend to have anxiety and depression. Rhodiola is a great choice.
Okay. Interesting.
Mhm.
I like that. Now, there's different ways. I liked.
By the way, you take it in between meals. So.
Okay, rhodiola.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so herbs, botanicals are tend to be in between. I always tell people to take most supplements with food, and the botanicals, the adaptogenic herbs, are in between meals, like more on an empty stomach.
Okay. I know I always liked, I could feel the difference with ashwagandha, but not at a low level. I did need higher levels for me. So I
Nice.
don't know, like that's,
Okay.
it was recommended for me to take 100 milligrams. I'm taking that at, I
Okay.
didn't feel anything. So I went to the 500. I did that on my own, and I'm not going to lie.
Nice.
I was like, more is better, right? Of course, exactly what I tell people not to
Not
do.
to do. But it's short term, and
exactly.
you did notice.
But I did notice a difference, and I took it first thing in the morning, whereas I know other people take it at night on an empty stomach, and they say they sleep better.
They think it's going to help with sleep.
Yeah.
There is some evidence that ashwagandha, back to ashwagandha, can help with sleep as well.
Okay.
So I say try it.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a downside.
Yeah.
I don't.
Interesting.
In your dietetic training, was there a lot of emphasis on supplements and
No,
vitamins?
no, but I'm, like I said, more than 30 years in as a dietitian. We do have, thank you for asking that. There are practice groups, and we do ongoing continuing education. I was one of the probably original members of what was I can't even say it, complementary and alternative medicine dietetic practice group. It is now called Dietitians in Integrative and Functional Medicine. That's always been an area of interest for me. I have had a strong interest in botanicals, even above just normal vitamins and vitamins and minerals. I think before I even became a dietitian, I spent many years living in Germany when I was young, just to throw out a little self history, and a lot of research on botanicals took place in Germany. So just kind of fun fact
That
about
is.
more of the combination of studying it with the personal interest in it. And I think it's really important, though, for all dietitians to spend time learning this, doing the continuing education in this area, because there's not a single, if you're working directly with clients, patients, whatever we want to call them, then you'd be remiss to not be continuing to study this evolving area of supplements. And it is evolving.
Yeah. It's changing.
Always. I mean, and like you said,
Yeah,
there's
some that's garbage, some that's really excellent products out there that are really helping people.
and there's things that I think are forgotten and then they get
Yes.
brought back around.
Yes.
Like I think creatine is one of those. It's been a
Creatine is
hot
one of
topic
those.
lately. We just did a podcast on creatine itself. I mean, I'm a huge fan of it. And that
That's
you said that was
awesome.
one of your others that you're a big fan of. So that's very big on social media again. They've
Mhm.
done a lot more recent studies with it, even for neurological wellness, cognition. So yeah, it's like making its way again.
It is, and I think that that's a good thing as well. What do I want to say about it? There's a lot that people can go and research on their own, and they do, and you're YouTubing it. Even my kids are watching. My son has told me what he's going to take, and he's going to load. It's really funny, teenagers, because there's so much information out there about that. But before I forget, we had talked offline about the Office of Dietary, so ODS.gov. I don't think anybody knows this.
I
Dietitians
didn't.
do. You
I
didn't
was
know this. That
impressed.
yeah, there's a whole under the NIH. There's a governmental department that is dedicated to all things dietary supplements, and you can go get fact
Oh.
sheet for health providers and for consumers. There are consumer fact sheets on all of this. So if you want to know, is there any credibility? Go to ODS.gov, Office of Dietary Supplements. It's really important to understand that this is all well researched. There's so much evidence out there to support all of these, most of these supplements, especially creatine is what I'm getting back to, but
Yeah.
all of them, all vitamins, minerals. So ODS.gov. That said, if
I'll
you're
have
a
to pin that in the show notes. I like that.
okay, if you're a consumer and you just want more credible information, where do you go? I think it's a great starting place. Okay, back to creatine. I want to tell this story because I think a lot of it didn't come into the limelight until recently, but I was at a conference at least 8 years ago. We're talking pre-pandemic. And because I'm more of a generalist in nutrition, and it's very difficult to stay on top of everything. I do like to, though, because I don't know if I'm going to have an athlete come in, meet with,
Mhm.
or a teenager, or my, you know, older population. But I really have worked with clients of all ages. So at this point, I was very much into triathlons myself, and working with triathletes and athletes, and then being a mom to 4 boys as they were getting older and athletic. So in any case, I was researching ergogenic aids and what is a true, in other words, what's, a performance enhancement
Mm.
supplement and what is not, what's valid, what's not. Creatine came up. So I was listening and decided to attend a lecture at a conference, and this presenter, this researcher was talking about creatine being really important in post-concussion. And I
Mm.
was fascinated. So again, this is at least 8, 10 years ago. And I looked into it and I thought, why are we not
Mhm.
using creatine when in kids when they have a concussion? We're talking sports concussions, and not just kids, but all athletes.
Sure.
Go look at that research now. It's like finally we're talking about this. And so even recovering could be anybody. I had a client who flipped over on his kid's hoverboard and hit his head. And I was the one who said, you really need to be taking creatine in your healing process. Start to take 3 or, up to 5 grams of creatine. Little side note story.
Yeah.
I don't think I really get a chance to talk about situations like that where it's, and as a dietitian, helping somebody in their healing from a head trauma, any type of trauma, and even a minor concussion. I had a friend last year who she also fell, and I told her, I said, please take the creatine, not because you're a or menopausal woman who has brain fog. Like that isn't necessarily where it's helpful. So I want to say that too, again, back to my coming into a situation where you're already suffering from something, we'll call it um, brain fog. Does creatine reverse that? Not necessarily. Is it still helpful? Absolutely, for cognitive function, but for building and maintaining muscle as we age and across the lifespan, it's very helpful. So in any case, I'm a big fan of creatine. I've started to take it. I started over a year ago with the 3 grams up to 5 grams. Ton of evidence out there to support. So my dailies are the probiotic and creatine, believe it or not, before I even touch on other vitamins and minerals. And
Yeah.
I like to tell people what I take and what I
Perfect. I do
promote.
too. I love it.
Go ahead. Did you want to talk a little bit more about the benefits of creatine?
No, I mean,
there's so many different-
we did our podcast.
Yeah.
I love it. I recommend any
Send listeners
female
to it.
35 and older definitely to be on it.
Absolutely.
You know, especially anybody on
Preventatively.
those GLPs for sarcopenia.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's just many benefits. Yes. And it
Listen,
doesn't affect
Yeah.
the kidneys like they
Set once.
used to say. once,
Absolutely. So can I just
yeah.
give the plug again? Please listen. You have your vitamin D podcast. You have your creatine podcast.
An iron podcast.
The iron, because there's so much with each of those individually that it warrants going and listening to. So I'm saying this to listeners because we can't cover it all.
Right. Exactly.
I think we've done.
I think this has been
Justice.
very informational and
Thank you for coming on again.
I love being here. Thank you for having me, giving me a chance to really talk about these very important topics in nutrition and things that I love and am passionate about, helping people.
thank you, Susan.
Thank you again.
Thank you. The information contained in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of diagnosing, curing, treating, or preventing any disease. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Before using any products or services referenced on this podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, carefully read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or should you have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Dr. Brian Moraes, Deanna Weilbacher, and Hybrid Medical Solution, do not claim responsibility for any adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for any statements made by the guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referenced.
If you would like to submit any questions or if you have any topics you would be interested in hearing about on future episodes, please contact us through our website, www.hybridmedicalsolution.com. That is solution with no S at the end. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, all under Hybrid Medical Solution.